Thank you very much, Jordan Maxwell, for joining us for this interview for Age of Truth TV. It's wonderful that you would invite us to come here to your house in Colorado.
Well, thank you for thinking enough of me to want to interview me. I appreciate that.
You've been doing so much work revealing secrets about this global conspiracy for 60 years almost. And you've been, let's say, the first one on this scene.
All I remember is back in 1959 and 60, I was giving lectures at little small venues like mom and pop bookstores and little libraries and just little groups where I'm talking about secret societies and the international banking cartels, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what, 58 years ago?
How did you already know about these things at that time?
Because I have always been interested, even as a kid, in secrets. I knew adults are not telling me everything, and I knew that because I know it from my own family. And so I would ask adults as I was growing up questions, very penetrating, sometimes personal stuff. And they would give me a nice little pat answer, and I know they're lying to me.
And you were a skeptic from an early time.
But I was a skeptic not of phenomena that I lived with, and not the world, but people. And so I started delving into all kinds of dark places. And I grew up from, I'd say, about 5, 6, 7 years old, began to have strange experiences in my life. I would, startling stuff would happen to me as a kid. Yeah, I would wake up in the middle of the night and see things in my room moving.
Like what? Things?
Objects? I had entities. I don't know what else to call them. It's just entities in my bedroom at night. And then I would, go to my eyes and think, what am I seeing? And then it moves over. I was never frightened by it, but I realized that there's another world that this is not just my world here, there's another world. It's not just the world you live in. I was born and raised Catholic, and so at 9 or 10 years old, you are confirmed in the Catholic Church. If you're 9, 10 years old, you have a ritual you have to go through. It's called confirmation. Mm-hmm. And so at the confirmation the day before, I was in the Catholic school, and the day before, the nuns, the teachers told us, now tomorrow at the confirmation service, tomorrow night, after the service is over, the bishop will be there, and he might possibly, maybe not, but he might possibly ask you children, all of you children, if you have any questions, that he'll try and answer them for you. And so when that happens, remember, you don't ask any questions. You just keep your mouth shut. You don't have any questions. And so the next night, the bishop was there, and he said, now that you children are Catholics and the confirmation service is over, if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them for you. And so I stood up, knowing, all the kids knew, you don't have any questions. So I stood up in my arrogance. I stood up. I want everybody to know who I am. And I said, yes, Bishop, I have a question. I said, my father works with torches, like a welder. And if I held a torch and it was on fire, and an angel appeared to me, could I burn the angel with the torch? Would it hurt him?
Wow.
And he says, well, no. And I said, why not? And he said, well, because angels are spirits, and you can't even see a spirit, much less burn one. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to say, fire is a natural thing. Like you need paper or plastic or wood to burn. You can't just burn anything. And I said, well, then why am I told that I'm going to go to hell where my spirit will burn forever? You can't burn a spirit.
That's a good point.
Yeah, at 9 years old.
Oh, great. What did he answer?
Yeah, and so he started muttering and trying to figure out what he was going to say. And there was a little Irish priest, very red-haired, an Irish priest, standing very close to where I was. And this priest said to me in front of everyone, sit down and shut up. Sit down. So I did. But then I thought to myself, I know what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. And you knew it wasn't real. You knew it wasn't the truth, what they are teaching people.
I was watching everything. I'm watching their mannerisms. I'm watching what they're doing. I'm watching their interplay and personalities between people, how the priests were always very subservient to the bishop, and the bishop was always very subservient to the people. And I'm thinking, now, this is a game you're playing, and I'm not buying it. And so I started asking questions at 9, 10, 11 years old, and adults were not answering my questions.
It's interesting that you were a Catholic, because what we've seen in the last 10 or 20 years maybe is a lot of dark secrets coming out about what is going on, especially in the Vatican. And you've
And they're
talked...
far more darker yet than you know.
Really?
Far more darker than you even suspect.
Could you please start going into that
Well, I don't think that's
alley?
I don't think that's very safe for me doing that. But,
Really? You have spoken about what is happening in the Vatican.
First of all, I always try and say that I am not the world's foremost authority on anything. I am smart enough to know how much I don't know. But I'm also smart enough to know that you're not going to be perfect on everything. So sometimes maybe it's just your opinion, and your opinion may be wrong. And so I try and tell people that I'm not the world's foremost authority. I prefer to think of myself as just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge.
But now you're actually, I hope we can reveal your age.
Yes, I'm 77. As of December, this past December, I am now 77 years old.
Wow.
I feel like 120, but I'm 77.
Wow.
And what's really interesting to me is
Because you've done so much.
I scare myself thinking about all the strange places I've been.
And people you've known.
And people I've known, and yet I'm still alive. I will give you my opinion on the world scene today.
Yes.
I believe, it's just my belief, based on 58 years of experience. I believe that there is a concerted, organized, conspiratorial movement in the world, and I refer to it the way it refers to itself, as the World Revolutionary Movement. Most people have never heard that term, but it's called the World Revolutionary Movement. And basically it is the power, the political power, and the money, and the wherewithal to make things happen in the world that's behind all sides. The communists are being promoted, financed, organized, and directed by somebody, while the Nazis and Adolf Hitler was being financed and directed by somebody. And then you find out that the Mormon church becomes very powerful, and a lot of money and prestige, and the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists and Scientology, all of the major religions in the world, somebody is financing them. Somebody knows what's going on, and it's not what you think. And so when you begin to see the major religious movements in the world, and Jehovah's Witnesses is one cult that I know about. I know things about the Jehovah's Witnesses most people will never be privy to know.
Really?
Yes.
Like what?
For instance, I went out to dinner back in I don't know what it was, 67, 68, in Los Angeles. There was a big Jehovah's Witness convention, big one. And so three of the, what they call the governing body, the 12 men who sit in New York City, who govern the whole movement of Jehovah's Witnesses, well, three of them were there in Los Angeles. And I happened to be in their company with them. And my dear friend, a young friend my age, was part of family with one of them. So he got to go where his uncle, who was on the governing body. And since I was his close friend, he could always get me in to go. And so I went to dinner with the 3 members of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses.
You're observing.
Yeah, just observing. When the conversation finally quieted down, I asked one of the members of the governing body, once a year you put out a yearbook telling the world what you've done and what you're doing and all that. And in the yearbook this year it says something to the effect that the Watchtower Society has paid out in salaries over $67 million, which does not account for all the money that they're buying land and property and printing presses and big properties in Europe and opening up big operations and printing operations in Asia and all that's all big money. But they said they had just paid out $67 million in just salaries alone for construction, for people who are doing things for them.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. And so I said to him, I'm aware of Jehovah's Witnesses in Los Angeles. And some of the wealthiest areas where Jehovah's Witnesses are, they tell me they're having problems just paying their rent.
Oh, so
Yeah.
they didn't spend the money or get it.
And so the Jehovah's Witnesses who are living in Beverly Hills or in these wealthy areas, but they're telling me that they're just because they're in a wealthy area, that doesn't mean they're filthy rich. And so they are having problems paying their rent and paying utilities and things. Right. And so I said, Jehovah's Witnesses are not known as being a wealthy, powerful organization.
No.
And yet they're buying properties all over the world. They're buying printing presses. That's not cheap. And they're paying out $67 million in just salaries alone. Where are you getting the money? That's what I'm curious about, because all the witnesses I know in wealthy areas here in LA, they don't have anything. They're struggling just to pay their bills like everybody else. There was a young man, young Greek boy, but I didn't realize, was the chief accountant for the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. He's the chief accountant. Mm-hmm. So I said, so where are the Jehovah's Witnesses getting this money? Mm-hmm. And he said to me, in front of everyone, he said, we have 2 corporate accounts. One is Chase, is the Chase Bank in New York, Rockefeller's Bank, and another one is the what is it in Philadelphia? J.P. Morgan Guarantee Trust. Back then, it was Morgan Guarantee Trust in Philadelphia and Rockefeller Bank in New York. And I said, so
they were funding the Jehovah's Witnesses?
That's right. They fund Jehovah's Witnesses. So I said, explain that to me. He said that we have an open account with those 2 banks. And I said, what does that mean, open account? And he said, basically it means once a year they give us a checkbook. And whatever you write is covered. That's simple.
Oh, how convenient.
Very. And I said, you mean on the scale that Jehovah's Witness Watchtower spends money? They're writing out millions of dollars in checks, and it's covered? And he said,
to whom? To the people in the administration?
Yeah, the administration of Jehovah's Witnesses, the governing body, the New York headquarters. Well, when they write checks, those are big checks. Well, he just got through telling me that it's covered. Don't worry about it. Whatever you write, it's covered. So I thought to myself, wait a minute. And I didn't say anything, but it struck me that Jehovah's Witnesses are always talking about this evil world and all these evil people and the bankers and the evil government. And yet it's the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan that are financing you.
Why would they do that, the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan?
Because Jehovah's Witnesses, like all the other York Rite religious systems, they're referred to as York Rite systems, are preparing the people around the world to accept a political establishment which is coming. And the political government which is coming, is not here quite yet, is going to be promoting that they are from God, it's God's kingdom. and God is bringing a new, wonderful, new order to the world. It's called the New World Order. The New World Order. That's what it says in the Watchtower publications. Many, many times in Watchtower publications, it talks about the coming New World Order, in which the Lord himself, God, will oversee this new government, and there will be a wonderful new way to live, and no more war, and it's all going to be wonderful, and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are paying for it. You like that? And I thought, no, something's wrong here. So that was the beginning of my beginning to find out what's really going on here in the world. And now, today, it is my opinion that there is not one single religion, not a political or spiritual philosophy like Hindus or Buddhists. These are philosophical systems. But I'm talking about actual churches. Organized churches. All of those churches, synagogues, mosques, all of these different major institutions, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, are all corporations on the stock market. They're all corporations, money.
So how would you describe the New World Order? What exactly is that? We've heard presidents and world leaders and figures, political figures, talk about the New World Order for many years. And it's actually all over the world that they talk about that. But why do they do that? A lot of people still don't know what the New World Order is, or haven't even been listening when they mention it.
Yeah. And I have been called many times, I have been called a conspiracy theorist. No. Correctly understanding, I'm a conspiracy analyst. I'm analyzing the world I live in. What I do today used to be called a journalist, an investigative reporter, someone who spent many years reading and studying and researching a particular organization or particular subject. And then one day they write a major book on the subject. Why? Because they know what they're talking about. They've been looking at it for many, many years. And so they were referred to as research analysts. And the government is very concerned about research analysts because the U.S. government, like all other governments, have things like the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, because governments don't care if you're a believer. You go to a church or go to a synagogue or whatever, and you're referred to as a believer. Governments don't care what you believe. Freedom of religion. They don't care what you believe. They want to know what you're doing. They don't care what you believe. So they have organizations called CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. They don't want to hear what you believe. They want to know who you really are. How much money do you really have, and what are you doing behind the scenes that government don't know about? We don't care what you believe. They want intelligence. And so that's why I say, I'm not interested in what you believe. I want to know. I want proof. And so that's why there's a big difference today between being a believer and somebody who has done his homework.
But very often when people like you and others talk about things that are so otherworldly and out there and wild, for a lot of people, they just can't take it in. How they will say, how can you, Jordan Maxwell, prove what you're saying? I mean, maybe not necessarily about the New World Order and that structure, because it's more, say, if we can say down to earth. But if we're no longer down to earth and we go into space and alien races and all of these things that we also want to cover today,
I understand.
Then how can you prove that?
That's right. And I understand. And I would suspect that that's a very good question. I don't have any problem with that. My answer would be that I don't need to prove it. I am just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. And I have been in the company of very powerful people that you don't know that I know. And I've had conversations that you were not privy to know about. And so I don't need to prove anything.
And they revealed that there are things going on in the universe that we are certainly not being told here on Earth?
Obviously. I have had events in my life that I was there and I was an eyewitness to, that I saw with my own eyes. And I know who they were, I saw what they did, and they know that I was there and saw them.
And can you reveal some of that?
I don't think so. Because I could tell you some stories about very famous people that will probably get me hurt. When I talk about extraterrestrials and UFOs and all that kind of thing, I've had experiences where I was there with other people, with my friends.
And did you see some of that?
And I was there when it happened. Oh. So that's why it doesn't bother me when someone asks me, well, how can you prove that? My answer to that is, I don't need to prove it, son. I was there.
Have you seen what is called a UFO or a spaceship?
Have I ever?
Have you seen any alien races, species from other planetary systems?
Let me tell you a story that happened to me when I was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. I moved to Los Angeles from Florida. And so I had a room, and I was in North Hollywood. And so I only lived 2 blocks from downtown. So on Saturdays, I'd walk downtown to have breakfast and hang around town. And so I walked into the restaurant one day, 1959, and there was crowded. The place was crowded, no room at all, except one chair at the counter. So I sat down at the counter, and there was a girl sitting next to me. I'm 19, she was probably 17 or so. And so we started talking. I liked her, she liked me. And so then after breakfast, we got up and took a walk down the street. We went to a movie, and so we started meeting on Saturdays. One night, on a Friday night, she came, knocked on my door, and she said, my dad wants to talk to you. And I said, I'm not interested to talk to your dad.
Okay.
Nothing I need to talk to your father about. And she said, my dad is a very important man, and he has something he wants to tell you. The moment I saw him, involuntarily, I got this strange feeling, the hair raised up in the back of my neck. I got a strange feeling about him. And I know this is not a normal man. But it was involuntary. I didn't want to feel this way. It's just my spirit was reacting to his presence. And then he said to me, he said, remember back in Florida when you were back in Florida at home and your dad built a new back porch? Remember when he tore down the old back porch and built a new one? And that scared me. And I didn't want to show tears in front of my girlfriend, but he scared me. How would he know? But my dad did build a new back porch. And he said to me...
And you hadn't told the girl?
No, never told her. Why would I need to tell my girlfriend about my dad's building a new back porch?
Ordinary talk.
No. And so when he said that, it scared me. And he said that one night you were about 8 years old, and one night you got up, and you were not supposed to. You were supposed to be in bed sleeping, but you got up and you went on the back porch late at night, and the moon was full. Remember that night you went out on the back porch in the full moon? And that really scared me, because I was thinking, how much more does he know about my personal life? And he said to me, remember when you were on the back porch, the green lumber your dad had used because it was cheap, but it was green lumber and it smelled funny at night. And you remember how you picked it with your thumb? Remember that when you picked the wood and you put it in your mouth like picking your teeth? And you were smelling it because it smelled funny? And I said, yes, I did. And he said, I know. We were there. And I said, who's we? And he said, you asked to do something with your life. Why are you here in Los Angeles? Why did you come here? And I said, I don't know. I just needed to come. It was a passion to come to Los Angeles. And he said, that's right. We brought you here. After all, you said you wanted something to do, so we brought you here to Los Angeles so you can do something. After all, you asked God, so we're giving you a chance. And I said, who is we? And he said, you've always been interested in UFOs and aliens and otherworldly subjects, haven't you? And I said, yes, very. And he said, yeah, I know. We've been watching you. And he said, would you like to see some UFOs up close tonight? And I said, yeah, I would love that. And he said, and then he said it this way. He said, well, that I can do for you. Come with me. Mm-hmm. And I said, where are we going? He said, we're going to see the UFOs. You said you wanted to see them. Well, come with me and I'll show them. And so the two girls got up, and I looked at my girlfriend, and she's looking very interesting look on her face, like, yeah, this is my father. Mm-hmm. This is him. And so we went out in the front yard, and this was about midnight, back in 1959, midnight in North Hollywood. And he looks up into the sky and starts inaudibly talking. He's moving his mouth, he's talking, but you can't hear him. And then he turns to me and he said, they said that they're coming from the Griffith Park area going north, and that they'll be coming over the mountain right here in just a minute or so.
Didn't you ask him at that time who he was?
No. So I was watching what he's doing. And within about a minute or so, for sure, they did. Three of them. Three beautiful disc-shaped craft, whatever they were. They came from the Griffith Park area. They came over and they stopped right over the top of us in a triangle formation, and they were.
But they were round.
They were
like
round,
disc-shaped.
But they were round. But the bottom of each one was like a pie cut in 6 or 8 slices, and each slice was a different color. But they were laser colors, not just regular color, laser colors. But in 1959, I didn't know what laser was. All I know is that these colors are profound. The greens were brilliantly green, and the orange was phenomenally orange. And so they were, now I know, they were laser colors, and they were circulating, but not so fast as to join the colors. But they're brilliant colors, circulating on all three. But what's important is that all three of these craft were full moon size, not just little lights, full moon size, right over the top of us. And I'm standing there with the two girls and the father, and we're looking at these beautiful, gorgeous things, whatever they were. And
Did they give out a feeling?
Huh? Oh, God, yeah. I had a strange feeling that, who is this man who can talk to the sky and UFOs show up? What man can do such a thing?
Right. We want to know.
And so I want to know. And he turns to me and he said, they're beautiful, aren't they? And I said, they're gorgeous. But what is this I'm seeing? He said, that's us. You're seeing us. And you said you wanted to serve God. Well, we're going to let you. And so we have.
But what does God have to do with what, an alien species or whatever you?
That's what he said.
We want to know who he was now.
Yeah, because he said, you talked to God, and you said you wanted God to let you do something important. Well, we brought you out here so you can do something important. So in my mind, as a 19-year-old, because I'm not stupid, I started to think, wait a minute, there's something going on here that I'm not fully aware of what this guy's talking about. But he does speak to the sky and UFOs show up, and he knows everything about me and my life. I'm fascinated who this guy really is. How does he do what he does? Yeah. And so my whole idea about God is rapidly changing in my spirit. I don't know what we're talking about here when you talk about God. All I know is God is dog, sparrow, back.
And did you find out?
We'd go out there and roam around way out in the desert, and he would tell me about all the extraterrestrial life forms that are here, where they're from, and where they're living. And we'd go out and look at the mounds, and he would tell me the different alien groups that are here on the earth.
We want to talk about that also, what you've discovered in the last 60 years about that. But who did he say he was?
He never told me who he was. He just said.
And you never asked?
I don't think I ever asked. I just listened. I just listened.
How could you not do that when UFOs appear? And he's saying things that you've done totally in privacy.
but I'm enthralled with him, and so I'm just listening.
But do you think he was an extraterrestrial?
That's what I think. That's my I
But
think.
he looked human.
Yeah, perfectly human. But that's what the Bible says. The Bible says that the gods they look human.
But who wrote the Bible?
Well, I don't know.
What is the
saying,
Bible?
I think the Bible is a very interesting and profound book. But I understand it because I've been looking at it for 58 years. And I've talked to all the professionals.
But it's written in code, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, and I'm the one who talks about that. I'm just telling you that there's a deeper story there. I believe that the Old and the New Testament are metaphors, spiritual stories that are metaphors. And if you're looking at the Bible as history, then you don't understand. You don't get it. But if you're looking at this Bible with spiritual eyes and knowing it's telling you something, but it's a metaphor, it's a symbolic story. Mm-hmm. Because the Bible has Jesus saying, many will look with their eyes, but not see. They will listen with their ears, but not hear. And with the heart, not get the sense of it. And so I'm saying that's exactly right. There's something in the Bible, but you don't see it. It's a metaphor. It's a symbolic message of symbols. And if you understand the symbolic message, now it gets scary because now it's real. Now you can finally see it. That's why when you educate someone, they say, oh, I see what you mean. What do you mean you see what I mean? Yeah. Well, I get it. I get
you understand it.
Yeah, I understand it. Yeah. Well, how do you understand? You stand under the foundation. If you're going to build on the second floor, go down the first floor and see if the foundation is going to hold what you're going to do on the second floor. So now you're standing under the foundation to get understanding. That's where the word comes from. Right. To stand under a subject. And now you understand. And so I understood that he has knowledge and can do things I can't, and I love being around him because it was fascinating. Mm-hmm. I learned so much from him. I didn't feel required to ask him, where are you from and who are you? He was my friend, my girlfriend's father.
And you had been very inquisitive, though, since your childhood.
I was very inquisitive of here.
But you couldn't ask him. Was it something that blocked you from asking him, or what was that?
No, it just never occurred to me to ask him, where are you from and who are you?
But in the Bible, for example, we talk about the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, but that's all symbolic. It all has to do with metaphors.
Can we talk about the symbolism behind that particular section?
Well, what you need to know about the Bible right off the bat is Genesis 1:1 in the English Bible, the King James Bible, does not say what it says in Hebrew. It does not say what you think.
So it's been rewritten.
It's been rewritten, retranslated, and it's all screwed up. Mm-hmm. And so, in the King James today, you will read Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's not what it says in the Hebrew. It doesn't say that. And so I talked with one of the leading rabbis back in 1960 to 65, was a dear friend of mine, and we used to talk all the time, and he was a very powerful rabbi in America. And I asked him, and he said, nowhere in the Bible does it say God created man. That's Christian ideas, but the Bible doesn't say that.
It's just a story that is written to control people or to make them believe something in a certain direction.
That's right.
How many different alien species and races do you know of, or heard of, or been told about?
I have heard from people who should know, who are in a position to know, and they tell me there's over 50.
Over 50?
Over 50.
And who are the most powerful alien races? Are they all bad or good? And who is working with, let's say, the government?
That's a good question. And I've had experts tell me their opinion and basically what they know. I can't swear by it, but I've had experts who should know, and they tell me there's over 50, and that most of them look human.
Most of them look human.
But there are others who don't, and there are others who are not physical, others who are energy fields, and they can...
They're interdimensional?
Interdimensional, exactly, that's the word. The Bible basically says, if you read it, it says that that we were created by aliens. That's what it says. And so, but those aliens said in Genesis 1:28, when God is, well, let me go back and lay the foundation because it's a big story, but basically Genesis 1:1 is not correct. It says in the King James, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But in Hebrew, the word God is E-L. El is God in Hebrew. So therefore, if you go back to the original Hebrew and read it, it should say, in the beginning, El created the heavens and the earth, because El is God. But it doesn't say that. It doesn't say El created the heavens and the earth. It says, in the beginning in Hebrew, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Well, that's different. What does that mean? Well, Elohim is a plural. Just like in English, you have a C-A-R, a car, you put a comma and an S becomes more than one. Cars. Well, in Hebrew, Elohim is a plural, which means it should be correctly translated, in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. And so then later on, when we're talking about God creating Adam and Eve, no, it's not God. The gods created Adam and Eve. And what does it say in Genesis about God creating the heavens and the earth? It says, the God said, come let us make man in our image after our likeness. And so the rabbi told me that, and so I said, well, doesn't that say that God created man? No, it does not say God created man. The rabbi said, go back and read it correctly. It says, the gods, more than one, said, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Not make man, but let us make man in our image, after our likeness. How do you do that? We'll mess with his DNA. We'll mess with his whole system of reproduction, the sexual system to reproduce. And so they recreated us. They have said, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness.
So humans were there before?
That's right. Humans were there way before.
Way before, and then they were changed?
Hundreds of millions of years. Hundreds of millions, if not, in point of fact, billions. And the reason I would say this earth has been the home of highly intelligent life forms for billions of years. Why do I say that? Because in Africa alone, along with other places in the world, mining companies have dug down into the earth many, many miles. And all of paleontology and archaeologists will agree, all agree across the board, that at a certain depth down that far, that strata is at least 3.5 billion years old. When you go that far down, you're in strata, which is 3.5 billion years old. All scientists agree. But at that depth, they're finding handmade artifacts. Handmade artifacts, melted and made into rings or strange little designs at that depth, which should tell you that somebody was here at 3.5 billion years ago creating handmade artifacts. So when you want to talk about the history of the earth, you need to go back and do your homework.
Does it have to be billions of years? It could be from the Lemurian times or Atlantis.
All I know is what the paleontologists of the world say. That when you go down that many miles down, the paleontologists, I don't know, they're the experts, not me. They say that's 3.5 billion years old.
What are your thoughts on hollow Earth, the hollow Earth theory? Then, if you can go down that far, well, what about going further?
I think the hollow earth is not in point of fact history. I think it's a probably a symbolic story because it doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense to you?
No, not at all. Hollow Earth does not make any sense to me at all. It's totally ludicrous, in my humble opinion. But I'm not an expert.
So what about Antarctica and
Antarctica.
No, that was Admiral Byrd who went there with his plane and then suddenly disappeared and went into the Hollow Earth and saw civilizations and whatnot.
I'm not sure. It's just that for me, the jury is still out on that question. It's like the flat Earth.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about the recent flat Earth theories that have been so popular recently? The flat Earth does not
appeal to my sense of logic and intelligence. It is ludicrous. However, having said that, I don't know for sure because there are some very good arguments for the flat Earth that are very legitimate and need to be answered. And so I don't know. So I leave that up. I'll leave that till later on.
So no hollow Earth, no flat Earth, which is the two opposites.
But my feeling is no, neither one. But I'm not the world's foremost authority. So I'm just saying, you're asking me my opinion. I'm saying that my opinion is neither one of them are true. But there may be something to it that we're not hearing. Where maybe it's a symbolic story telling us something. This hollow Earth appeals to me symbolically, like there may be a world down below, an underworld, a power, and a whole world of people and powers that we don't know about. Well, we could call that the Illuminati or the secret societies that control the world. They're not out here in front of you, but they're in the underworld. They're underneath of your world. And so that may be a symbolic story about the hollow Earth. If it's actual fact, I don't know. But I don't think so. But
how are those secret societies and the Illuminati, how are they connected to certain alien species? You've talked about this for years.
I am totally convinced for myself, because of the people I have talked to and the people I've been in contact with that should know. That I can't even mention their names or their positions in this world, but they were very high. And they have told me that it is apparent to them that the people who run our planet today, the guys who are really behind the scenes, nobody's going to know who they are. You're never going to hear about them. You're never going to see them ever. You can see the presidents and all the big shots and all the oil kings and all that, but the people who are really in control of our Earth are not human.
So it's not the 13 bloodlines behind of
it could be something
Illuminati?
It could be something connected to that, but it's a bigger story than the 13 bloodlines.
So there's more.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more, but they're not human, and they are superior to you in every way, in technological and knowledge and understanding. They have come here from a long way away. They've come here a long time ago, and they've always been here controlling our destiny as the human family.
But who are they then?
I don't know where
are they from.
I don't know where they're from, in fact, but I suspect they're from probably star systems like the Pleiades, because we hear a lot about the Pleiadians, and even in the Bible, the Pleiades is spoken of as very holy to God. And so, like I said...
But they are human-looking,
they're human-looking, yeah.
Are they the ones they call the Nordics?
Yeah, they could be called the Nordics, but I think the Nordics are the extraterrestrials who probably created us. And therefore, they didn't create us, they recreated us.
They changed the DNA?
Change the DNA.
Are we some kind of a clone, or is it like a genetic manipulation?
Again, without being redundant, the scripture says, "Come, let us." Who's us? And the Christians will say, "Oh, well, that's the Blessed Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost." No, that's Jewish. It's Hebrew. It's Old Testament. Don't give me all that stuff about the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, because all gods in the world are always three. All gods are in the world are triune gods. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. No, it's all a story. It's based on three. And then you have the three major religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Why three? Why couldn't it be seven? No. And then you'll find out, no, you're playing with numbers now. There's something going on here, and it's encoded.
So the Nordics, they came from where?
I've heard that the Nordics have come from, and then I've heard that the reptilians, they come from Beta Reticuli star system.
Is that what they call the Draco?
Yeah, the Dracos and Dracos, yeah. I don't know, but I'm saying I've heard many times that the Dracos or the reptilian, they come from a star system called Draco, or whatever it was. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I don't know. But I have met people in my life that are not from this world. I know they're not. I can't prove it. But what they showed me and what they could do and what they knew and what they were able to do was not normal. That's not human.
When you talk about the reptilians, why do we humans have a reptilian brain?
I know, yeah. That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I do too.
What are your thoughts on that?
I have talked with so many professional people, airline pilots, high government officials, law enforcement officials, military people, underworld people. I've talked with a lot of people in my life. And so many times as I'm traveling around the world, giving lectures on these subjects, I meet people who are very important. And they come to me and say, Jordan, I want to tell you something in private. And then I find out who they are. And I'm thinking, wow, man, I'm sitting here with this guy. When the world would see me with him, I'd probably get assassinated, right? And they're telling me things that they know about the extraterrestrials who are here.
Why would they tell you that?
Because they have somebody to talk to that they don't have to teach. They don't have to bring me up to speed.
But they also know that you could be dangerous because you're revealing these things.
That's right,
You're
exactly.
talking publicly about it.
That's right. And so
why would they tell you?
Well, no, I'm not saying anything that could be attributed directly to some source. I'm just giving you my opinion based on all my life's work.
It's interesting that they would tell you that they would tell you, maybe somebody else that they could trust a little bit more, like in a family circle or something.
I have a very, very impressive scientist from NASA, extremely brilliant guy, and he's written books. And he came to an event I was doing up in San Francisco. I was speaking at a conference, and he came to the conference, and he came over to me and said, Jordan, I want to talk with you in private. And so we went into the lobby of the hotel and sat quietly in the corner. And he said, I work for NASA. Here's my identification. You know, he's a NASA scientist, physicist, and he worked on this, he's worked on that, he's worked on all these big programs. And he said, you talk about Saturn. I got stuff on Saturn you don't have. Let me tell you some more about Saturn you don't know. And so he began to explain to me stuff about Saturn that blew my mind.
And we want to know.
Well, first of all, Saturn is inhabited. Somebody's there.
But the surface is not solid, and it's gas.
First of all, no, you don't know that. You've been told that.
Oh.
And so I asked him, my first question was, if you know so much about Saturn, why the rings? And it was just a conjecture. He said, I've talked to other people about this too in NASA. Some of them have said the rings are like a dish, like a television dish for deep space communication. So when Saturn moves around, the rings are around it. It's like a dish. And now they can pick up communication from way out. Hundreds of thousands of light years out, they can pick up communication with the rings because it's like a television dish. And then when it moves around this way, sometimes it will move around where the rings are like this instead of this, and there's the planet in between, so it looks like an eye inside the, And so Saturn is very important in religion. The Jewish God today in Judaism is the planet Saturn. The Jews don't realize it, but Saturn is the God of Judaism today.
Please explain that.
Yes. Jewish religion today is based on the worship of Saturn.
They probably wouldn't know that.
No. It's the reason why is because who cares? I mean, nobody reads anything. Nobody cares. You just do what you do because they were born into it. So if you're Catholic, you just go to Catholic church. You never realize that as a Catholic, you're worshiping a God named Dagon. D-A-G-O-N is the God of Catholicism. Nobody knows anything about Dagon, and nobody cares. Why? Because it's just a church. So we go to church, and we feel good, and we have all our friends there. And I said, yeah, but you're worshiping Dagon, goofball. Do you know that? Do you know who Dagon was?
Who?
Do you know what Dagon is? Because it's right there in front of you if you just look at the church.
I think you'll have to explain that.
Yeah. Look at the church. They're worshiping a god named Dagon, spelled D-A-G-O-N. Simple. A Phoenician, Canaanite, ancient god that came out of the sea. A God that came out of the waters of the oceans. He came out of the sea and he did all kinds of miracles and strange things he knew and taught men how to live and how to grow food and how to do this and how to do that. And then he would go back into the ocean at night and they would see him go back into the ocean and he's gone.
But that's not very scientific. That's a myth, right?
It's an ancient religion, the Phoenician Canaanite religion. I didn't say it actually happened. I'm just saying that's what they believe. And you got to remember that the ancient peoples, Sumerians, the Babylonians, and all those ancient peoples, they were not writing for Hollywood. There was no Hollywood motion picture company.
It's written in code, right? Like in the Bible.
Well, yeah, it's written in code in the Bible, yeah. But if you study it, and as an expert in studying it, of which I'm not an expert, but I know how to read. And so I read the experts, and they're saying, look at this scripture. See what it says here?
So how is Dagon related or connected to Saturn?
Oh, very interesting question. I didn't say it was connected to Saturn, but I said the Jewish God, Yahweh, is connected to the planet Saturn. There's so many different gods that are involved in our religions. Like in the Hindu, they have God knows how many gods. And also in the Islamic world. Islam, originally, Allah was a sun god. Originally. This is thousands of years before the Arabic culture of today. Allah was a sun god. And Allah was the same as Yahweh. The Hebrew god Yahweh is the Arabic god Allah. Allah, Yahweh. It's the same God. And both Allah or Yahweh, Jewish or Islamic, originally Allah and Yahweh were sun gods. But then something happened in the ancient history to change that so that Yahweh or Yahweh and Allah are now moon gods. And Moses was the leader of a moon cult. Moses was a leader of a lunar worshiping cult. And so Yahweh was the moon. Well, it was actually the sun. Yeah, but now at Moses' time, Yahweh is now the moon god. And so the moon god in Arabic was Allah. So Allah is a moon god. And so today, the Jews have got the sun worship with Yahweh, and they also got the moon worship with Moses. Moses was a leader of a lunar cult, a moon god.
But Moses is a fictional character.
Yeah, Moses is a fictional character. And so was Jesus a fictional character. So was all of these. King Solomon. There was no King Solomon.
But it's like a subliminal message.
Yeah, there's a whole method of distributing religious thinking and concepts and ideas. But I believe that there's somebody very intelligent, not from here, who is manipulating all of this to entertain us, giving us gods and philosophies and ancient religions, and never realizing in your mind for a moment all of these stories are coming from somewhere, and somebody's leading us.
How is that connected to Saturn?
Saturn is a very important planet in all the ancient religions of the world. All the ancient religions.
You're saying it's a transmitter because of the rings, you say.
Well, I'm just saying that as an idea that I've heard expressed. But the bottom line is Saturn is very important in the Hindus will tell you Saturn is extremely important. The Catholics, Buddhists, all the ancient religions of the world, Saturn is very important.
So is that the reason why, because Saturn looks like an eye with the rings around, is that why they have the all-seeing eye?
That's what some of the best physicists and scientists and mythologists who work together have been saying for a long time. There's companies out there that have been companies of scientists, philosophers, mythologists, some of the great minds of the world are saying. That's what they're saying. And I was a member of that organization. There's one organization in particular that's very famous for saying that. It's up in Portland, Oregon, and at one time I was affiliated with that, and I even hosted their conferences back in 1995, where we were talking about, or they were talking about, I was just a host at the conference, but they were talking about where are all of these stories about the gods and who created us and the end of the world and all these things come from. And they went into the science behind it and all the philosophies behind it and the different religions and where they got those ideas. And I was sitting there for 4 days listening to all the incredible scientists and physicists and mythologists talking about the world of ancient religions and what really was there.
So the all-seeing eye is the eye of God?
No, that was the eye of God in Egypt. In Egypt, it was called the eye of God. Why? Because you are, when God's Son, and we call Jesus God's Son. No, it's S-U-N, not S-O-N. And God's Son, well, he's the light of the world. Well, of course the Son is the light of the world. Well, yeah, but he's our risen Savior. I know. Every 5:30 in the morning, it always rises. So he's the risen Savior.
And the sun god in Egypt was called Ra?
Ra. One name was Ra. Another one was Aton, or the Aten. And that's a different religion that was in Egypt that they called the sun god Aten or Aton. Look it up in a dictionary. A-T-O-M was the Aton, was the sun god in Egypt. So now the Hebrews, the Jews have Yahweh. But the Jews will tell you that God's name is so important that you should not use his name. You should not use his name at all. So you use a substitute. And they write it with 4 letters. They write the 4 letters, and the 4 letters represent the most holy of all gods in the whole world. But it's just 4 letters. And so the Jews call that the Tetragrammaton. Are you aware of that?
No.
Yeah, well, Tetragrammaton is the name of God in its most holiest form, but you cannot use his name, his real name. So the name of God is Aton, because Tetragrammaton is tetra, which means 4, gramma, which means a letter, like you write A, B, C, those are letters. So tetra is 4, gramma is a letter, A-T-O-N, Tetragrammaton. But the Jews will tell you today, ask any Jewish rabbi or any Jews, what's the name of God? And they said, no, we can't use that. Can't use his name. Well, what do you call him then? We call him Tetragrammaton. Tetragrammaton, A-T-O-N. And then everywhere around the world, and every synagogue you will ever go into in any country of the world, you will always see God's name inside a sun. Always.
Always. But that was El, right? E-L.
No, that's different. That's different again. El was the name of God, but Tetragrammaton is a particular God. So when we hear that Jews were the first monotheistic religion, monotheistic means the worshiper of one God. But you're mistaken. The Jews were not the first monotheistic religion. That was in Egypt. But as the rabbi explained to me, the Jews were not monotheistic. They were heno, spelled H-E-N-O, henotheistic. Henotheistic means choosing one God from a group.
Of several.
Of several. But you chose one. So if you got 15 gods standing here, they're all equal, and you pick one, I'm picking you to be my God. And if you accept, okay, then I am now picking you, and I'm agreeing, and I'll be your God, and you'll be my people. So therefore, we can say that I, as a Jew, am now a worshiper of one God. Not the one God of the whole universe. No, I have 15 of them, and I picked him. So I'm the worshiper of one God. Yeah, that God. And that's why in the Bible and the Ten Commandments, God says in the Ten Commandments right off the start, he says, I am the Lord your God, and I will not have strange gods before me. He didn't say I'm the Almighty God. No, I am the Lord your God. You picked me, and I agreed. So we got a contract here. The same thing a young man would say to a girl that he's going steady with. Yeah, there are other young men out there even better than me, but I'm committed to you, and you're committed to me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there are a lot of other young men out there, but I better not see you with one of them. I don't want to have any other man in your life but me. Mm-hmm. So we've made a deal here. Mm-hmm. I picked you, and you agreed to pick me. Mm-hmm. And so when you say Jews are God's chosen people, no, they picked one God, so they're the worshiper of one God. Yeah, but there's 14 others you didn't mention. So right. That's that way to understand that.
So in what way is Saturn connected to that religion in Judaism?
Saturn was connected because Saturn was referred to as the inhibitor. Saturn, in all the ancient sciences of the world, everybody knows that Saturn was called the inhibitor, the stable one. Why? Because it's always sitting right there, and it's the only, as we can't see any planets out past Saturn. But with your naked eye, at least you can see Saturn. It's a little star, but if you look at it, it's Saturn. And so Saturn was called the inhibitor, which means anything that can hold you back and teach you a lesson. So therefore, mafia, police department, government, the military, the Marines, they're called Saturnalian societies. They're Saturnian. Why? Because they can hold you back. They can put you in prison. They can teach you a lesson. So any organization that is powerful enough to teach you a lesson and hold you back, we call it Saturnian. Talk to anybody who knows these words. Saturnian means severe holding you back and teaching you a lesson. So therefore, the Jews will worship Saturn on Saturn's day. They go to Temp El, and El is Saturn. So El is Saturn in the ancient world. Well, it says in the beginning, El said, come let us. Us, who's us? And so therefore, what I'm saying is that Saturn is the inhibitor who holds you back. So the ancient Jews or the ancient people said, if he's going to hold us back, then we're going to, and incidentally, the planet Saturn in the ancient Phoenician language, the planet Saturn was referred to as Shabbath. S-H-A-B-B-A-T-H. Shabbath was Saturn. And so if you're going to worship Saturn, and he's Shabbath, then you do it on a day you call Sabbath. Sabbath is Shabbath. Shabbath is the planet Saturn. So the Jews worship Shabbath on the Sabbath. And that's why they go to the synagogue and have their holy day on Saturn's day or Saturday, right? And they always have their holy days after sundown, after 6 o'clock. They have their holy days, and always the holy days after 6. Why? Because that's when their day starts. Their day starts after 6 o'clock. So unlike Christians, we at 5 o'clock in the morning, we greet the sun. No, they're worshipers of the moon. And so from Egypt looking eastward, from Egypt looking east, there's a whole series of high mountains in the Sinai. And every night the moon comes up in the east from the mountains. So they call him, the Arabs call him the old man of the mountain who lives in the mountain. Why do we say that? Well, obviously every night it comes up from the mountain. But it comes up after the sun's gone down. It comes up at 6 o'clock. So if we're going to worship the old man of the mountain or the moon, we do it at 6 o'clock in the evening. Because now he's going to be in charge of the universe all night long. And so that's when our day begins, because we're worshipers of the moon. So it's a moon. Even the Jews will tell you they have a lunar calendar. And so they trace their day from many moons. Well, but so is the Native Americans. They trace there, and they're called tribes.
So Saturn is also connected to the moon, definitely. And also, several researchers say that Saturn and then the name Satan is related.
I got news for you. You'll hear a lot of talk about Lucifer.
Yes.
Yeah, Lucifer this and Lucifer's the devil. And Lucifer. Well, in point of fact, if you do something really interesting, go to a library and read a book. Go to a library and read reference books on words and terms. Most people don't have time to do that. If you do that and you do the study of the word Lucifer, you will find out Lucifer is Jesus. Jesus is Lucifer. The Bible says that.
So a word that means the opposite, and people worship it, like what? Saturn?
Satan is a word in Hebrew meaning an opposer in court. So if you're going in court and you're a Jew and you're going into court with another Jew, and so in the Jewish religion, you're going into court against your brother, against another Jew, that's very serious. You take a Gentile to court maybe, but now you're going into court to fight another fellow Jew.
So that's a defense lawyer?
No, it just means two Jews fighting in court.
Really? Is that what it means?
Yeah, and so basically that's where it comes from. And so the word for an opposer in court, when you are opposing your brother in a court, you're enemies now. You're fighting each other in court. So you're an enemy. Well, the word for an enemy that you are opposing in court is called a satan, S-A-T-A-N, a satan. A satan is an opposer who's opposing you in front of the judge. The judge is God. He's opposing you. He's saying you lied and you did something, and he's telling God, he's telling the judge. The judges all wear black robes because black robes were assigned to Saturn's god, Saturn's priest. Priests of Saturn always wore black robes. So a black robe represents someone who is officially representing Saturn, the god Saturn who's the inhibitor. And he is the inhibitor as the judge. He can throw you into jail.
So it is connected.
Oh yeah, it's very, very connected.
Satan and Saturn.
Yeah, Satan and Saturn. But I'm saying that Saturn is a god of the Jews today, and they worship him on Saturn's day. And his name in the Phoenician language is Shabbat, and so they have today something called Sabbath. Mm-hmm. So in the Ten Commandments, remember to keep holy the Sabbath. Sabbath is a worship of planet Saturn. Why would you need to keep that holy? You need to go back in school and learn your own religion. You need to understand what these words mean. I mean, don't tell me I need to keep the Sabbath holy. Why?
But
Why
they certainly would not believe or think or want to embrace the idea that that's actually what they are serving or what they are believing in.
Of course, no, they don't know that they're serving Saturn. They don't know.
No.
But one of the most important symbols in Judaism is the six-pointed star, the star of Saturn, the Star of David. The Star of David is six-pointed, so it's a hex. The ancient peoples in the ancient world used to draw a circle on the ground and then draw a triangle in it. And then they would draw in another triangle opposing it. So that's the Star of David inside a circle.
Hexagram.
It's a hexagram. Then you step inside of it and cast an evil spell on you. And so that's where we get the word, they're casting the hex on you. They got the hex put on you. Because they're standing inside the hex and they're putting the hex on you.
And so hex means which?
Hex means a six-pointed star. And so today the Jews walk around proudly to show they got the hex put on them. Right? Because it is a six-pointed star, and the encyclopedia says a six-pointed anything is a hex.
But in Satanism, they use the five-pointed star.
Now, that's different. That's Lucifer. That's the Luciferian star. But Lucifer is Jesus in the Bible. Jesus even says it in himself. He says in Revelation 16, the 22:16, the very last book of the Bible is Revelation. And the very last chapter in Revelation is the 22nd chapter. So go to the very last chapter, the very last book, and look up Revelation 22:16. And Jesus said, I, Jesus, I am the offspring of David, and I am Lucifer. That's what it says. And so I'm saying, I didn't write the Bible. I'm not writing it. I'm just telling you what it says. If you just go do some homework and go read it yourself and explain it to me then. But that's what he said. I am Lucifer. And so
So the Christians are also worshiping the opposite than what they believe and what they think they're doing.
They're worshiping Lucifer.
The same that you said that the Jews are doing.
Yeah, exactly. And the Muslims too. The whole world is worshiping what? Something satanic? Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that when I say satanic, I think the whole world and all the worship is going on throughout the world is being led. We are all humans, and we're being led into this by higher powers in the universe.
Why would they want us to worship something that is sinister and dark instead of something good and light, which people think they're worshiping?
Yeah. Well, when you meet them, whoever they are, ask them that. That's a good question.
I don't run into them often.
I know. I actually had an incredible experience at Area 51.
How could you go near it? It's totally prohibited.
No. I call it Area 51. It's a little town outside of the base called Rachel. Rachel's a little Mickey Mouse little establishment out there in the middle of nowhere.
Is it near the Alien Center?
Yeah, it's near S4, and all of that's just like a mountain range. It's only about a mile out. There's some mountains, and over those mountains is Area 51 and S4. So you could sit here in a restaurant at night and have a beer and have dinner, and you're only a mile from Area 51. So anything coming in or going out at nighttime, you're going to see. And that's why people go there to Rachel and sit out at night and watch all kinds of strange things.
So is it true what they say? That is going on inside of Area 51?
No
and
doubt
also the underground levels?
No doubt in my mind whatsoever, because I've seen things with my own eyes there that will challenge your understanding of life on the earth. I've seen it. I was there with other people. I'll give you their names. We saw things there that you would not believe.
What did you see?
We saw 7. It's a big story. I could go back and it's a big story.
Just briefly.
Briefly, we saw 7 beautiful full moon-sized UFOs 20 miles north of Rachel. We were 20 miles north of Rachel in an area called Railroad Junction. And we were out there about 2 o'clock in the morning. A lady friend of mine and a friend of mine who owns a bookstore in San Diego. And all 3 of us went out there. And we saw, when we got out of the car, it was totally black. It was all overcast. You couldn't see anything. All of a sudden, the clouds opened up a little bit, and 2 beautiful, gorgeous, glowing, bluish-white saucer shape came in and stopped over the top of us. They were gorgeous. They were emanating light on the clouds above them. They were reflecting their light on the clouds. 5 more came in behind them, and there were 7 of them sitting right over our head. All 7 were beautiful, gorgeous, and scary, frightening to me. My 2 friends thought they were beautiful and were delighted to see them. I was frightened, and it scared me, because I know something they don't know, and I know this is not human. And whatever it is...
Could it be military, and something that the military technology...
I know a lot of people think that it could be just us, military. But I'm telling you, what we saw them do, and what we saw later, it wasn't military. It was not of this world. Because one of the aliens came in our bedroom when we went back to Area 51.
In your bedroom?
Yes, in our bedroom. It came into the motel where we were staying that night. After we saw the 7, we went back to our motel in Rachel, and we were there in the bedroom, and there were 2 beds. There were 2 bedrooms, and my friend who's a publisher in San Diego, he stayed in the 1 bedroom, and my lady friend of mine, she's a radio talk show host in Hawaii, she and I stayed in this 1 room.
Wow. You always want to have invited guests in your bedroom, don't you?
No, I don't want visitors from another world in my bedroom. My friends, that's okay, but no.
That's it.
And so we laid in bed talking about what we saw tonight, those 7 beautiful disc-shaped things out there in the desert. And what we saw them do,
Right.
was not human. Not human, not military, no thank you, not human at all. They did things that humans can't do. And so, and I know, I was born and raised in a Navy town in Florida. One of the largest naval air stations in the world is in Pensacola, Florida. The single largest naval air station in the whole world is in my hometown.
What came into your bedroom after you had seen those
Some
lights?
kind of an alien. In the middle of the night, we were talking that night before we went to sleep. We were talking about what did we see tonight? Because what they were doing out there in the desert, we humans can't do. We don't have that kind of technology. For instance, what they would do is there was 7 of them. They're big. They were like full moon size, 7.
Yeah.
And they're glowing bluish white light.
Yeah. And you said that.
Yeah. But then they would come together instantly. And
Merge.
Quicker than a blink of an eye, they would come together, all 7, without touching each other. And then less than a blink of an eye, they would blow out, and now there's a big circle of 7. Then instantly they would all change sides in a blink of an eye. They were all different places. In one blink of an eye, boom, they would all change. And then we were standing looking at that thing, and they would all change again. In a blink of an eye, from out there to out there, in a blink of an eye, they all change. All 7 of them change. And then they come together in a circle and blew out in a circle. And we don't have that kind of technology to do that.
Except maybe if it's holographic.
Well, that's always possible. That's possible. But how do you explain the alien that came in our bedroom?
Yeah, I want to know about that.
Yeah,
alien.
I bet
Please
you
tell
do.
me.
Yeah, you need to talk.
What kind of alien was that? We are so excited. We need to know.
Yeah. Well, the alien that came in our bedroom that night obviously knew it was one from out there that we saw, and when we
What
came
did
back,
it look like?
I'm going to tell you, it didn't come into our bedroom where Ivy and I were. I fell asleep. We finally all went to sleep. Then the next morning, I got up, and Paul and Ivy had already gone over to the restaurant to have breakfast. And so I go over there, and there's a big bunch of people at the table, and Paul and Ivy are talking to them. So I think they're telling them about the 7 UFOs we saw last night. So I sit down at the table, and then I find out, no, they're not talking about the 7 UFOs. They're talking about the alien that came in our room last night. And he came in Paul's room, and he woke him up. And Paul Tice, you can talk to him. He's the one that saw it. And Ivy said she saw a little bit of it from our bedroom, because it's right next door to the other bedroom, and both doors were open. And so she saw some of the action going on in there, but the alien was visiting Paul, not me. I slept through it.
Did he say what it looked like?
Yeah, oh yeah, he explains exactly what it looked like.
What did it look like?
He said that when he said he was sound asleep, and all of a sudden he woke up, involuntarily woke up, and was totally awake. Instantly, it was totally awake. And he said, and just above him was a little night light, a little light in the ceiling. But it hadn't worked. It wasn't on. It never has worked. And he said, but he looked up at the light, and there was a face, an alien's face, and it was greenish. And it was like a hologram. Like a hologram. You could see through the face till you could see the lamp above it. Oh. But this green face was looking at him, and he said all of a sudden as he saw it, he looked at it, it's looking at him, this hologram face, the room started circulating. He said the room started circulating around me in my mind. And he said, I'm seeing the door going this way, then I'm seeing the window going this way, then I see the door coming back around. And so I'm seeing the room is circulating while I'm looking at this alien face. Then it slides across the ceiling, hits the wall, and comes down. And then he said, and I got up, sitting in bed, and now it's even with me. And we're talking to each other. And so I would prefer you talk to Paul. I'll put you in touch with him.
He hadn't been smoking anything funny, had he?
Paul Tice, everybody who knows Paul, he's a very businessman. He's a publisher. But he's had a lot of strange experiences in his life with aliens and extraterrestrials.
We were just touching upon this subject on the reptilians. Is that something you can go into? It would be very interesting if you can talk a little bit, because a lot of people are talking about how the reptilian race or races are involved in worldly matters, things
but
on
they
Earth.
are what I think is who's running the world. I think we're being, the whole human race is being misled by alien life forms who have come here from another place, who are smarter than we are, technologically superior, just way down the road, smarter than you'll ever be. And they know how to run civilizations, and they know how to start religions and governments. They call the shots because they have powers we don't have, and they can make things happen.
Reptilians.
Well, the reptilians are wherever. They may be Pleiadians. I don't know who they are. In point of fact, I haven't gone to their house yet.
But can you mention a couple of different races that are very important?
Well,
to
yeah,
this whole
like the Dogon.
UFO phenomenon.
Yeah, like Dogons. It's spelled D-O-G-O-N. Dogon, not Dagon. Dagon is a Catholic.
Kind of similar.
Yeah. Dagon is D-A-G-O-N, which is the god of the Catholic Church. But there is a there's a black, in Somalia, in Africa, there's a black tribe of natives there. And that Indian tribe is called, the black tribe is called Dogons, D-O-G-O-N-S, Dogons. And go back and read on the web, go look up Dogons and read about some really very impressive scientists and people, writers and researchers.
What do they look like?
It's just a bunch of black tribesmen, people live in a tribe in Somalia, but they are now blowing people's minds over what these tribal people can do. They know everything about the universe. They tell you everything about the universe, how heavy the sun is, how heavy the earth is, all the different planets and how they got here. And they tell you all kinds of things that scientists today are just now beginning to find out they're right. And they know all about the stars, the star systems, and how far it is from one place to another, and how to do this, how to do that, how to do space travel. And so now scientists have finally heard about them, the Dogons, D-O-G-O-N-S. And so they've gone over there and talked to them. And they say, how do you know all of these things that we didn't even know? NASA is learning from you. All the things you're telling us are fascinating, and they're true. How do you know this? You're just a black tribe in the mountains of Mali, and we are the great scientists in America, and you're telling us things we've never heard.
So that tribe in Mali is
they're called the Dogons, and they know all kinds of things about the universe and us as humans that nobody knows. So they asked them, these scientists and writers and people who go to visit, how do you know these things? Because you're right. Well, we didn't even know it. How do you know it? And they said, they come tell us. Every so many years, the aliens come from out there and they meet us. They come to our place. They come to our community, and they tell us in our own language. In our language, they tell us about the universe, about what they're going to do, about what's going to happen on the earth, and when it's going to happen, and who's going to do this, and who's going to do that, and what's going to happen to the whole world. And they tell us all these things. So when they leave, we just tell everybody else, and nobody knows what we're talking about until you find out we were right. Well, how did you know? It's simple. They told us. That's all we know. They come here and they tell us. They come down and they're
So saucer. Is that a good race? Is that a good alien race that are telling the Dogons these things?
I don't know. Read Robert Templeton's book. He's the one that made it famous. He's from, I think, France, and a French writer and author and lecturer and a scientist. And he went there and stayed with the Dogons and listened to them and